Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Today it is the 4th of September, 2022. And on today's show, we recap the weekend that was in Big 12 football, specifically from the point of view of quarterbacks. So much was made in this league about the quarterback play coming into the year. How did that manifest itself here in week one? I'll give you guys my thoughts on that on today's show.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Once again, Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Hope you guys are having a spectacular long weekend, a Labor Day weekend. I know some of you still have to work, but hopefully you were able to enjoy some football over the course of the weekend. I know I was. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel here on YouTube. Find us wherever you guys get your podcast. And also make sure you guys follow us on Twitter at LOBig12. You guys can find me at Josh Neighbors _. All right, so this weekend, the Big 12 goes 9-1, and we're going to break down these games, but really we're going to highlight certain stuff, like as you know, we're going to kind of break it down as we go throughout the week. Obviously, a lot of big moments across the weekend, not as many as we're normally going to get because of the competition, right? The Big 12 goes 9-1. The big part of that is the level of competition, and a lot of this. We're going into the season to talk about quarterbacks. That was a big sticking point in the offseason. So let's go through like those quarterbacks and kind of how they performed, where they're at this weekend, because there was a mixture of returning guys, new starters, guys who were there the year before, but, you know, like Chandler Morris and Tyler Shough, who kind of had starts, but whether it was injury or play or, you know, situation, didn't start the whole thing. Kind of update on where those guys are, because ironically there's injuries involving both of those guys. Looking at the new guys, the JT Daniels of the world, the Adrian Martinez's and Dylan Gabriel's and Quinn Ewers of the world. So kind of taking the quarterback angle here to go through the weekend's action, and we'll start back on Thursday night. So not able to break this game down because I had a game that day, and also the news that came out of college football playoff expansion was a bit more pressing than getting to the action, just because it was, you know, it's huge, obviously, for our league when you get news like that. But I tweeted this out yesterday, and let's start with a backyard brawl. Because this was actually not the better of the, well, statistically speaking, was not better of the two quarterback performances that we saw on Thursday night, right? You had at Oklahoma State, Spencer Sanders put on a clinic, and you had JT Daniels perform, I thought, really well in a 38-31 loss to Pitt. I tweeted about this. I said JT Daniels, I thought, looked really good. And the fact that he was under duress and under pressure, it felt like for most of the evening, was, I thought, like probably what made his performance as impressive as it was. 23, 440, 214, 2 scores, and an INT. And you know, this is a guy, he also ran for a touchdown too. I should also throw that in there. They sacked him in this game 3 times. They had 7 QB hurries. They were in his kitchen all night. And I thought he stayed in there and kept coming and kept coming. And obviously they had a chance to tie it there at the end. They had a chance to take the lead, right, in a tie game, 31-all. When the really unfortunate Bryce Ford Wheaton interception happened, because I actually thought Bryce Ford Wheaton was playing one heck of a game. But you saw it, you know, the West Virginia Mountaineers came up just short in the end of that game. And you think about JT Daniels, his journey here, right, from USC to Georgia, now to West Virginia. Like, he has had guys ahead of him. He has had injuries. He's really had the full array of things happen to him. And the fact that he's like willing to, you know, he's a willing player in like a really punishing game. Like, you could see a guy like that, really honestly, and to be fair, like I would be, you know, I would be maybe the same way. If you've been injured that much and taking all that punishment, have multiple injuries, different places, knee, shoulder, whatever it is, the fact that he was in there taking those hits, wanted to stay in there, continue to take those hits. He was a willing participant. He wanted to keep coming back for more. And I thought that was really impressive that he stuck in there the entire game. And he was poised the whole game. Do I think this fixes a lot of things for West Virginia? I mean, the answer is a big question of like, which JT Daniels are we seeing? Is he the full version of the guy that we thought we were going to get when he came, into college football? I mean, he looked really good. I'll just give you that. Like he looked like a 5-star talent. I guess we'll see more as the season goes along, like what's the wear and tear do to him. But in terms of like the guy, the person, the player, I guess you could say, kind of the mentality of the player, there's no questioning the toughness of that guy. He's a natural leader, and we can tell they rallied around him and they believed in him, and he was performing really well. And what was a back and forth contest that they could have easily won if it weren't for the Bryce Ford Wheaton drop, right? And once again, like Bryce Ford Wheaton, I'm not as high on him as some other people are. I still think he's a really good wide receiver, and they target him a lot. That's one thing too. They have a lot of depth issues. So I'm not sure if my overall opinion of like where West Virginia ends up will change, but I think like how competitive they're going to be on a game-to-game basis, like it's going to be hard to really hammer that team. Like you're going to have a really difficult time beating the brakes off that West Virginia team. Not saying I thought it would happen before, but I'm curious to see how like the season plays out for them in terms of like where do the wins come from? Like they might have really good. I mean, they might have a 5-7 season with some really difficult wins, much like Texas Tech does. Or they might have much better season than I thought. I think that's still on the table as well. We have to consider both of those things here. But I just think from a performance standpoint, like he was up to the challenge. He was 100% up to the challenge. I was really impressed, and I know the numbers aren't amazing, but like first game against that defense when your line didn't play particularly great. You can sign me up for more JT Daniels. I think I'm on board now. It wasn't on board before, but it's just like you have to watch it happen and play out first, right? Like you need to see it happen and be like, okay, yeah, he's the guy. After a long layoff and injury, whatever, like you need to double check to make sure he's still the guy. So I think it was okay to have some skepticism, but I think he delivered. I really do think he delivered. Also on that evening, got to mention a returner now, Spencer Sanders. Ironically, Spencer Sanders did not throw for more yards than Richardson did for CMU. But in a 58-44 win, Spencer Sanders was 28 for 41, 406, 4 touchdowns, also ran for 2 touchdowns, a 6-touchdown performance. I think 5 of those were in the first half. Got whatever he wanted. Like just the world was his. The world was his oyster, it kind of felt like there in that first half. I mean, wherever they wanted to throw to, whatever guy he wanted to throw to, whatever was happening, like he was just facilitating and running that thing on a really efficient level. Think about where they were at halftime. They were up 44-15. Now, they didn't close the game well, but Spencer Sanders now, over the course of his last 2 games, has thrown for over 770 yards, I believe, and he's thrown for 7 touchdowns as well. You go back to that Notre Dame game that he played, and he was absolutely, a house of fire there later in that contest. But 34 of 51 for 371 and 4 scores. Actually, it's been 4 touchdowns. He's run for over 170 yards combined in those 2 games and 2 touchdowns as well. This is a guy that with the performance that he had, your big question is, can you recreate this? It seems their defense is not going to be as good as it was last year. Obviously, things can change, and they've got some talented players there and a really good coach in Derek Mason. This defense lost a lot, though, and they got shredded in the second half of this game. Call it a lack of focus, call it the first game, whatever it was, they got the hammer put to them in the second half. I mean, in this game, Richardson ends up throwing for, as I mentioned, over 400 yards and 4 scores as well from his side. This game was not close in the end, in my opinion, at least. The score made it look closer than it actually was. But look, like Spencer Sanders, when we go later on in the year and we go to games against Baylor and Oklahoma, the questions that will be asked in those games, like, can you win us the game? And the reason why I have not been as high on him as I have other quarterbacks, or as high on, on teams, on this team, Oklahoma State, as I was last year is once again because of like of when you ask him to win games, like, is that the way Oklahoma State can they do it that way? Right. When it's not a defensive issue or not a defensive thing, right? When you're not just running the football and playing great defense and that's how you win games, when it's going to be on his shoulders to score, not once, not twice, maybe 3 times in a shootout type situation where your defense just can't seem to get off the field, much like that second half that occurred. When you get the ball and it's tie game, you're down 7, you got to keep pace. What does that look like? Once again, he was a house of fire in that first half. The way he was running the ball too, he looked like a great athlete, a really great quarterback who was in control of everything happening on the field. He was the best player on the field, I think, for most of the game. I know they wanted to slow things down in that second half. Does make some sense. They weren't great there. It's still 58 points. I don't really care how you get it. So he was amazing. He was absolutely amazing. Career game. Questions now. All right. As your schedule stiffens, got Arizona State this week. What does that look like? Can you get this thing going and keep it going the way you did this week? Defense be damned. Don't worry about that. But can you keep the offense functioning at a high clip? And I'm not saying 58 points a game, 50 points a game, 40 points a game. Like, can it look like this against Big 12 teams? I mean, I think it can. Let's see for how long it does. So I think he was spectacular, showing us so much of what we wanted to see and have seen the last couple of games. There's a chance he's turned the corner. Like, there's a chance like this could be not all the way, obviously, who he is, but like a version of this is who Spencer Sanders is, which I think is very exciting if that's the case. Not just for Oklahoma State fans, but just the conference in general. All right, let's take a quick break and then hit on the other schools. Today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. Go to Built.com today. That is Built.com. Use the promo code LOCK15, LOCKED15, LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. They've got the Built Go, the Built Boost, the Built Bars. They've got new puffs as well. So once again, Built.com, promo code LOCK15, LOCKED15, LOCK15 for 15% off. All right, Friday night games. Jalen Daniels looked fine. Kansas, I'll just put it like this, friends. He was really good. Devin Neal is fantastic. They looked like a D1 football team. Like, they looked like a Division I football team that is in a Power 5 that pounds bad teams. They were nip and tuck with South Dakota last year. Tennessee Tech, they blew them off the paper. 21-0 first quarter, at the end of the first half. This game was, 35-3. They outscored them in every single quarter, which is what you want to see, because they didn't finish games well last year. They finished this one very well. The TCU game, 38-13. So speaking of interesting quarterback situations, Chandler Morris starts. Wasn't really sold on him. Didn't look amazing. To be fair. And Darius Davis, by the way, shout out to him, man. Like, that punt return was electric. But you get a Chandler Morris injury. Max Duggan comes into this game. He's 2 for 3 for 27 yards, and the running game is what took over for them. So really, like, the thing is for them now, for Garrett Riley, and we'll see how long Chandler Morris is out for. I'm not sure I saw the particulars of what the situation is. Yeah, it says uncertainty. They're not sure about, obviously the knee injury, like, you're really concerned about it. So you really, you're thinking, hey, this could be a big problem. We have to watch the x-rays happen, whatever. The big question for them now is, can Garrett Riley do what he wanted to do offensively with Max Duggan at quarterback? Because we know their skill sets are different. If you just watch that Baylor game last year, the YOLO Chandler Morris game, as I call it, you know for a fact that, like, the skill sets are drastically different. Max Duggan's got that big play down the field ability. We know that. The problem is just the intermediate passing. And we mentioned that, ad nauseum. So I am now very curious. And I also think it'd be ridiculous not to think that Sam Jackson is going to get involved too. He had a really nice game. He ran for a touchdown. And also, let's see, I think, they didn't use him any wide receiver, but he was able to run for a touchdown. One of 4 guys who ran for a touchdown. Darius Davis took one in. Kendra Miller did. Amari DiMercado did. And so did Jackson. They ran for 275 yards total on the night. So this thing now is going to change some. Do they kind of alter the offense to look like last year's offense? I don't know. I thought defense looked okay against it. It's a bad Colorado team, man. That's a really bad Colorado team. Carl Doral has. So good win. They went out there and did it. But, quarterback situation, a lot of uncertainty. And that's obviously the angle that we're taking here on this. All right. The Saturday, let's see how much time we should really spend on this. I'm not going to I'm not going to boost these guys because they were all playing really bad competition, but I'm not going to demean them either, right? So it's a happy medium. Dylan Gabriel looked good in his first game as an Oklahoma Sooner. Oklahoma looked good in general. Check the box, got off to a nice start. You love to see that for him. 15 for 23, 233, 2 scores. Thought he was just kind of in command of the offense, is kind of ho-hum. They got Kent State next week. They really did a good job, I thought, of distributing the ball, and I want to see that continue. He hit Braden Willis, he hit Marvin Mims, Theo Weiss, Eric Gray, Drake Stoops. They were facilitating. They were making sure that ball got out to everywhere. I like the fact that, this game was never really in doubt. Like, they kept him in because they want to make sure they get as many reps as possible, in my opinion. And Eric Gray also had a really nice day on the ground. Like, they've got the kind of thunder and lightning situation. Marcus Major's going to finish off a lot of their drives. But they ran the ball pretty well as well, because Dylan Gabriel also found the end zone on the ground. So, the one thing with evaluating him is we already know he's good. So, this is not us asking, is he a good player, right? Much like we know Spencer Sanders is good. We know it's different than the JT Daniels, because we know JT Daniels is talented, but he hasn't been on the field long enough. So it's kind of a little bit of combination of both. Also, when you factor in injury, that's one thing too here with Dylan Gabriel is you factor in injury, he looked really good. That guy is completely healed from his injury. So he looks like pretty normal. And I think that's one thing there too. So pretty much what I expected from him. I think the distribution was good. Jeff Lebby got the ball to all parts of the field. They ran the ball to a bunch of different guys. I think this offense is, I think the strength of Oklahoma as a whole is how well-rounded they are. This is, when you look at an offense, the Big 12, there's actually not an offense that's got better backs and wide receivers coming into the year than this group. Texas was there. The problem is their depth is somewhat now taking a hit with Isaiah Nayor. And then, is Jai Hall going to play? Is he last the team the entire season? What are you going to do? Xavier Worthy and Jaleel Billingsley and Jordan Whittington, it's all good. I'm on board with this fully. But when you talk about the full complement of offensive weapons now that Nayor is down, the offensive line shot, I'm in the offensive line too. You factor that in, you got to like Oklahoma's offense. Maybe not as high of a ceiling as Texas's is. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think that that's the thing you like about it is this thing's well-rounded. They can, they're not going to meet the road for them. They're going to have some difficult games for sure. But I think you kind of like where they are right now. Just this was kind of proof of concept that they've got a lot of different directions that they could go. I mean, hell, they even, you had a freshman yesterday taking an end around, you got him taking, how was that 35 yards to the end zone on that run? 46. 46, for Gavin Freeman, a 5'8" freshman in his first touch as a college player. That was really cool to see. But they were on schedule, I will say, about OU in their win. Let's see. Also, Baylor, Blake Shapen, throwing the ball downfield looked really good, sharp. I mean, it's Albany, so I'm not sure how much we can draw from this. Once again, I think the learning experiences for a guy like Blake Shapen starting next week on the road against BYU. Not sure how good the defense is from BYU, but at least in terms of environment, that's a really good challenge. Obviously, we know he played in a Big 12 championship game, but that's going to be the first true road game that Blake Shapen's played as a starter. It's going to be a really difficult environment. It's going to be his third start. So your questions are going to be asked there, but I thought he looked sharp. I thought the offense looked sharp in a 69-10 nice win over Albany. Iowa State, same thing, man. This one's a little bit better because, Hunter Deckers hadn't looked great last year, to be totally fair. And he comes in this game and he's throwing the ball all over the place. And I like the fact that there's the safety blanket for them used to be the tight ends. That has changed. The safety blanket for them now is Xavier Hutchinson. And they found him 3 touchdowns, 8 catches, over 100 yards, 128 yards on the day, 3 scores. Found over the middle some, the outside some. I mean, he was everywhere in this game, and Hunter Deckers found him. And you can tell he's got the arm strength. I love that throw in the middle of the field he made to Xavier Hutchinson. It was a great touchdown throw. Had the interception there as well. But, he showed me everything I wanted to see. This is a good confidence-building game as we move forward and go for them into that Iowa game. So a 42-10 win for them. Hunter Deckers, to me, looking really strong right out of the gate. And obviously more questions of him will be asked of him when they go and play better teams. But positivity, this wasn't a Spencer Petras, I know he's not old, but against an FCS opponent looking bad. I know that there's much better FCS team in South Dakota they played Iowa did, but like this was, he lit them up. He lit them up and you wanted to see him light them up. That was the result you wanted. Guy who did not light it up. So Adrian Martinez did not complete a pass over 10 yards in the Kansas State 34-10 or 34-0 rather win over South Dakota. Like that was their strategy, was to run the ball. I understand this. Like that's the way it kind of worked out for them in this game. I was really not impressed at all by what Adrian Martinez did. I was not very impressed. And if you all have watched this show, you guys know that he has been a huge question mark for people like me and a lot of us coming into this year. Is if Kansas State wants to reach that potential, and we think it's a pretty high one, if all things are good, then it has to work well with him. And when you go into a game against Missouri next week, like, did you see anything this week? 11 of 15 for 53 yards, also did run for a touchdown too. You see anything this week to be like, yeah, this guy can win me a football game? Like if the Deuce Vaughn thing, for whatever reason, is not just working, we need this guy to throw a couple touchdowns, and compete with somebody in the fourth quarter of a game. Not there yet. Not saying it won't happen, but this game kind of played out weirdly. They didn't need to throw the ball, but I would have liked them to get the passing offense going a bit more than it did. I mean, Jake Rubley threw 4 passes, completed 4 passes, and almost did over 40 yards, 4 for 4, 42 yards. 11 for 15, 53 yards, and they didn't have too many pass plays that went for negative yardage. Like I checked, like there were not, I was able to catch some of this game. There were not a whole lot of pass plays for them that were going for negative yardage. They just weren't going very far forward. Now, luckily for them, Deuce Vaughn was awesome in this game. Malik Knowles, the thing about them is Kansas State's like big advantage is that they can plot along, kind of be a plotting offense, right? And boom, they can hit. I mean, they're this weird, slow offense that can hit big, explosive plays with more than one guy. Between Knowles and Deuce Vaughn, and maybe even Martinez in that running game, they've got the ability to hit explosive plays whenever. So it could be 5 yards, 6 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards, and then 75 yards. Malik Knowles goes 75 yards. They run for 297 and 4 scores. The also thing is too, they pitch shutout. So like maybe I'm wrong because they didn't have to pass the ball at all. So like I think that could be if you say, well, Josh, they didn't need to pass, totally fine. Like I believe it's a fair statement, but I'm kind of curious to see if when pushing begins to come, when push comes to shove, can they do it? All right, folks, I'm gonna wrap this up because my AC is not sure you guys can tell my face is red. My AC is not working up here. It is hot here in the state of Virginia. So we'll wrap this thing up. Couple more teams out of the Big 12. Obviously, we got to get to Texas, but I want to mention Texas Tech because they win 63-10. Tyler Shough goes out there and earns a starting quarterback job in camp, a competitive job, and it sounds like it really was. You guys know me. I'm a Donovan Smith guy, and you see Tyler Shough on a run where he did not need to get injured. I appreciate him going for extra yardage, I really do, but he was having a good game. He was 6 for 10 for 154 and a score. Slides, I think he stayed in the game, and then the next drive was out of the game. He goes to the locker room. He comes back. He's got a sling. He's got his arm in a sling, and so you're thinking, man, does this suck? Donovan Smith comes in, 14 of 16, 221, and 4 scores, albeit against Murray State. You're thinking, man, Donovan Smith picked up right where he left off. Wow, did Donovan Smith look really good in this game. And, he's got a chance to be a really good player just because of what he brings. The question is, much like the TC question, does Donovan Smith change the calculus very much for Zach Kittley? I think on my first watch seemed like a no. I really didn't see it that much, but we will see. Also, you gotta shout out Loic Fungi. I mean, this was a guy that we're going to talk about number 19s. I thought it would be Tyree Wilson, the other 19 on the Texas Tech Red Raiders roster that we'd be talking about. Nah, man, it's Fungi. 4 catches for 110 and 2 scores. One of our questions was, who is going to be the guy for them in the receiving corps? And I think our first guess was going to be Miles Price, right, the junior. But in this game, we got 2 guys over 100 yards. It was Jerron Bradley, who is 6'5", 215, a freshman, who goes 6 for 108 and 2 scores. And you get Fungi, who is 4 for 110 and 2 scores. And those guys, Jerron Bradley comes out of obviously a freshman, but it's not like Fungi's put up big numbers before. So to see that, and see those options available. Like this offense still has a chance to be very, very good. Very good. A lot of questions are going to be like, how consistent can it be? And what does it look like now? How long is Tyler Shough out for? But a strong defensive performance as well for them. I have to mention that 13 tackles for loss in this game. So we'll see if they can carry this defensive performance over. But I was very impressed with Texas Tech, albeit against this team, but still big quarterback news there with the injury to Tyler Shough. Finally, Quinn Ewers, 52-10, Texas beats ULM. There were all kinds of plays, man, in this game. I mean, we had punts being blocked, punt being blocked that was picked up by Keelan Robinson for a touchdown. We had Quinn Ewers, a nice throw to Jatavian Sanders, but he was like wide open. We had Roschon Johnson get in there. He did another one to Bijan Robinson. They had a pick 6 from Deshaun Jameson. He went 69 yards. Very nice as well. So like there was a lot of variety in this game. Quinn Ewers goes 16 for 24, 225, and 2 scores as well as a pick. So I thought this was kind of like what I expected from him. It's just kind of a up and down, type performance. A lot of positives, and they just kind of took care of business. He got his feet under him. Wasn't some record-shattering, record-breaking performance. Completes around, 16 to 24, puts you at 60. It's 2/3 of your passes? Yeah, 24. So 66% of his passes. That's pretty good. Obviously, the interception was there too, but it's not like he was chucking the ball way downfield. So I thought it was a mixture of both in this game, and they found a group of different guys. Not a ton from Xavier Worthy in this game, but I think it was kind of just getting the feet under him. And this didn't have to be a game that was all about the big guns getting the job done. It was about spreading everybody, getting the ball. Bijan Robinson goes 10 for 71 for a score, 7.1 yards per carry. Roschon Johnson 5 for 34 in a score, and also Brooks. They get him in there too. Jonathan Brooks. He goes, new freshman as well. He goes for a touchdown as well, 6 for 32. So, and the running game wasn't like excellent the entire night, but it was serviceable and good enough. And I think that will continue to get better. They're just trying to get guys touches, it felt like. And it was also, once again, good to see Roschon Johnson back out there. So, yeah, that's kind of the tour around the league from the quarterback perspective. We're going to dive deeper into stuff, look at some Kansas State things, some Oklahoma State stuff, and, really kind of think about what else from this weekend we can take as we move forward. Because this weekend was a really, a weekend was kind of getting people primed and ready. I've been through this before, but I'll do this one more time for you guys. Like, this was not a great week for games, but you go and you look next week in the Big 12 and look at what we have in week number 2 from the outset. Missouri versus Kansas State. That's a really important big game. I think Kansas State, Missouri's a good team that took it to Louisiana Tech, and they looked really sharp, and so they'll present some challenges to Kansas State. And that one's at noon or 11 o'clock Eastern time. Then Alabama and Texas. Need I say more on that one? Houston visits Texas Tech after their thrilling win over UTSA. And by the way, Texas Tech, just a 3-point, or they are a 3-point favorite in that game. Iowa State goes to Iowa in the Cy-Hawk Trophy game at 4 o'clock on BTN. Iowa's just a 3-point favorite. That means Vegas believes that game is dead even on a neutral field. 6 o'clock Eastern on Big 12/ESPN Plus. It's our first Big 12 game of the season. Guys, Kansas is they're less than a 2-touchdown underdog against West Virginia. 13.5 points is what the Mountaineers are favored by. And I think that line's pretty fair considering the way both teams looked last week. OU Kent State is kind of the one big throwaway of the week, that and TCU Tarleton. But at 7:30 on ESPN2, a Power 5 matchup, Arizona State goes to play Oklahoma State, 12-point spread there. And then at 10:15 Eastern on ESPN, the only top 25 game that we have right now on the books, this could change obviously, but in the non-conference, is Baylor at BYU. So these are a lot of your heavy hitting non-conference games. Yeah, OU Nebraska's next week as well, as is, Kansas has their big one against Houston, and Houston will eventually play Texas Tech, and then Texas Tech also plays NC State next week, and UTSA plays Texas. Like, there's a good group of other games, but these are really your heavy hitters in terms of non-con games. So we'll talk a lot about what happened this week, these games, and what that means moving forward. All right. Thank you guys for watching the show today. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at LOBig12. Find me at JoshNeighbors_. Also, make sure that you guys subscribe on YouTube, trying to get this thing up higher and higher. All right, my friends, till next time, as always, stay safe.